A simile is a figure of speech that's commonly found in descriptive or narrative writing, like stories and poetry. Now, a simile is when a writer wants to explain something or describe it more vividly by comparing it to something that is very different from, that is actually totally unrelated to. And a simile generally will contain the words like or as. Okay, so the meaning of a simile can be either explicit or implicit, meaning it can be obvious, or it might be a little bit more difficult for the reader to fully understand the writer's meaning. It might take some thought on the part of the reader. So let's look at an example. Now, when you use like, you're generally going to use a verb plus like to compare two things. For example, when Jenny sang, she sounded like a dying cat. Now, the meaning of this simile is quite explicit. It's obvious that I mean that Jenny's singing voice was terrible. But this example, her eyes were like ice, is an example of something slightly more implicit, meaning that you could possibly come up with different meanings for this simile. When we say her eyes were like ice, this could mean her eyes were very blue, they were unfriendly, they were cold. Now, generally when we use as, you're going to be using an adjective or an adverb. As, adjective, as, or as, adverb, as, to compare two things. And when you're using as, the meaning is, again, much more explicit and obvious for the reader to understand. For example, her eyes were as cold as ice. In this case, the meaning is a little bit easier to understand. Now, the most important thing to remember with similes is that it is not literal. It's not a literal comparison between two things. So if you look at this example, he plays hockey like his father. This is not a simile because I mean exactly what I say. Okay? There's no hidden or figurative meaning.